Hello my dear students and welcome back to Excellence Batch, and I am your Diksha ma'am. So far we have completed the biotechnology unit completely, and I hope you guys also have solved the DPP of those topics. So today we are going to talk about something which is very essential, which is very filled with curiosity. Human race is always curious to know about that. How have we originated, from where have we originated, or who were our ancestors, from where we come from, what are the various planets, and what's in the solar system and everything. They also want to know about energy and the energy we come from. So that gave rise to the topic evolution. So technically, if I talk about what is evolution, evolution is the process of change. It's the descent with change. We say that you are constantly being changed, a million years after years, and that leads to the new race, new species, new organism. So this is what evolution is. It's the constant change that is occurring. So this is what chapter we are going to study. Most of the students find it very boring, but this is one of the most interesting chapter. So whenever you are studying this chapter, just forget about that it's in your course. Just forget about that it's going to be in NEET. Forget about you're giving any exam of this chapter. Just focus on about your curiosity. You just want to know from where we belong to, right? From where have we originated. So today we are going to talk about the origin of Earth and life on Earth, and technically we'll also talk about, first of all, the origin of universe. All right, so where is Earth present? Earth is present, it's a part of a solar system. And where is our solar system present? It's in a galaxy, and millions of galaxies, they form the universe. So universe is so vast, you just can't think of that because we have not seen. We can just imagine that, right? It's so much bigger. So how did universe formed? So the universe was formed around 20 billion years ago. BYA means billion years. Billion years ago, right? And this was explained by a theory known as Big Bang theory. So this theory, it tried to explain how did our universe formed. So let's see. So according to this theory, there was a particle which was high in energy. There was a particle which was high in energy, and we don't know about this particle. We just say it was a particle. Okay. Some people also call it as cosmic dust. So this particle was high in energy, but it was unimaginable in physical terms. Unimaginable in physical terms. That means we don't know what this particle was made up of, but we assume that this particle was present before everything was there, and this was high in energy, right? Then later on, this particle explode. There was a single huge explosion that occurs. Just one but very large explosion occur, and that explosion leads to segregation of this particle that leads to formation of the gaseous clouds. By this, universe expands. Earlier the universe was just confined in this particle, and later on this expands because it exploded, then universe expand. So we say due to this single explosion, the universe expand and forms these gaseous cloud, and these gaseous clouds are known as nebulae. What are these? These are gaseous clouds. These clouds, they are made up of hydrogen and helium. What are they made up of? Hydrogen and helium. Because the explosion has just taken place, the temperature was relatively very high. But later on, slowly the temperature goes down. The gravity occurs, gravitation, the force it comes, which leads to the formation of the planets. And that gravity, the appropriate amount of gravity that is present, that is basically responsible for holding all the life together along with the other factors, right? Then later on, the temperature came down. Temperature came down. The gravitation force arise, and probably these all factors that leads to formation of galaxies. Formation of galaxies, solar systems, right? Like we say, every solar system has its big star, which is the sun, and around that the planets, they move. So imagine how many solar systems will be present if you have a lot of galaxies, right? So but in our solar system right now, we only know that only our planet is the one which is capable of holding the life, but we are exploring the other planets also. What if we find the appropriate condition? What if we find other mates which are already living but we don't know they exist, right? So this is how it is supposed that this is how the life occurs. Fine. Okay, moving further, if we say we have one planet or we have one star here, okay, or just make it simple. For example, this is Earth and we are standing on Earth, right? And here we have a star. Here we have a star. So the distance between the two planets is known as stellar distance. What do you call it as? Stellar distance. And this stellar distance is measured in light years. Because the things, they are so far away. If you are looking at a star right now, it's so far away that you just cannot measure the distance in kilometers or meters. So you measure in with respect to time, that how much time will it takes to reach that star. So meanwhile, the star you are watching, maybe that star has already been destroyed. Why? Because right now you are watching me. So, or right now you're watching anything, you can watch it because the light rays goes to the object and reflect back to the eye, and your eye can see the image within seconds because the object is present very near to you. If the object is present very much far away, first it will take these light years to go for light to go and strike the object, and then it will again take so much time to get it back. So that means that star, maybe it has gone away. The moment you see, that means it has gone away. Fine. So that means if you're looking at a star, you're looking in the past, but right now maybe that does not exist. Okay, so this is what it's also written in NCERT. Whenever you're looking at a star, that means you're looking in the past, because might be that has gone away, because the distance is so much in light years that may not have survived till then. Fine. So that's about the universe, a little deeper concept. Okay, so whenever you will get an opportunity, a free time, like you have given your exams, must read about universe and all these things. They are very fascinated, if they fascinates you, right? They are very fascinating. So you should read about them, have a little knowledge, because when you get the knowledge of a universe, other things, they are very little for you. And I think that's a real essence of life. Alright, so we are going to start with the theories of origin of life. So before, the science has not emerged so much out, there were a lot of scientists and theorists, people, scholars, who have given a lot of theories that how the life might have originated. So the first theory is a very primitive theory, very old theory. That's the theory of special creation, which was given by Father Soares. So this theory is technically a religious theory rather than a scientific theory. So for example, in Hinduism, it is said that there was a creator, right? There was a creator, there is a destroyer like Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, right? So all these, they are maintaining your life. Fine. Just like that, Christians or other religions, they also have the theories for origin of life. So one such theory which was given by Father Soares, he said that the life was originated. The life was originated in 6 days by a material which is known as materia prima. There was a material which is materia prima. This material have a lot of energy, and this gave rise to the entire life the planets and everything, the animals and everyone, this was how they were formed in 6 days. Because man is the most complex one, so man was formed on the 6th day. So according to this, man was formed on 6th day. Right? Next is the theory of catastrophism, which was given by Cuvier. So Cuvier said that Cuvier does not explain how the life originated, but rather he explained how the life will be destroyed. So he said that after we have completed our time interval, we are always with the expiry date. After our earth will complete the time interval, there will be a catastrophe or a calamity that will hit the planet Earth. That catastrophe or the calamity can be anything. It can be tsunami, it can be earthquake, it can also be the striking of a meteoroid. Then everything will be destroyed, and later on, from that material, inorganic material, the new life will originate again. So this was a theory of catastrophism. So this does not explain much about the origin of life, but rather it tells about the destruction of the life, right? So according to this theory, the life on earth will be destroyed completely after a calamity. The new life will originate again. Right? From whatever material is left, it will give rise to new life again. All right. Next is the theory of spontaneous generation, which was given by Anaximander, Aristotle, and Van Helmont. Life came out of decaying and rotting matter like straw, mud, etc. So this theory tells that there are certain inorganic substances, non-living substances, and these non-living substances, they gave rise to the new life. Is it technically possible? No. You know what they saw? They saw that when you put any grain like wheat or wheat bran in a pot, and you place some shirt which is wet and with sweat, wetty and sweaty shirt, and you cover it this with cloth, you will find out that after some day the rats will be formed here. So from that they thought that might be from this straw or wheat or grain the rats have originated. But no, rats just came there to eat it, but they didn't analyze that. Fine. So this was a theory of spontaneous generation, which says that life will came out from some decaying and rotting matter like straw, mud, etc. But this is not technically correct, because you all know we come from the pre-existing humans, or any living organism comes from the pre-existing living organism. So this theory is technically incorrect. So whatsoever they saw that in a storage house of grains there were a lot of mice. So might be the mice came from the grains, or from mud comes the eel. Eel is a kind of a fish, and that is usually present in muddy water. So they thought maybe from that mud the eel arises, but this is not technically correct. So this theory was also rejected. That's the theory of spontaneous generation. This is also known as theory of abiogenesis. That means biology is not much involved. Rather, they are saying it will come out from non-living matter, right? So they are saying that non-living things can give rise to living things. Alright, so that's not correct. So to disapprove the theory of abiogenesis or spontaneous generation comes the theory of biogenesis, which was given by 3 scientists, and it was even explained by these 3 scientists, Reddy, Spallanzani and Pasteur. So how did these 3 scientists reject the theory of spontaneous generation? First of all, what did they say? They say that omnis vivum ex vivo. This is what they said in Latin. That means life comes only from pre-existing life. What's the meaning of this? That life can only come from pre-existing life. That means the living organism can give rise to the living organism. The mice can give rise to mice. The fish can give rise to fish. Human can give rise to human. How did they explain it? So Reddy, first of all, what Reddy did? Reddy took a piece of meat. Earlier, this theory of abiogenesis also explained one thing. They said the piece of meat give rise to flies. It give rise to flies. But you all know, whenever you will keep the food like that openly, the flies will come to eat the food, right? So Reddy, what Reddy did? Reddy covered this food with a cloth, right? Imagine that's a cloth. And this is how Reddy covered the food. This is a piece of cloth and this is the meat. So when he covered with the piece of cloth, there were no flies on meat. So now explain. Did the meat give rise to flies? No. Spallanzani, what did Spallanzani do? Spallanzani, he took meat and then heat it. Why did he heat? Heat to kill if there is any bacteria or any microbe. Okay, so whenever you will heat the meat, the putrefaction will not take place. Putrefaction means the protein destruction will not take place due to microbes. Okay, so now what he did, he took a box, airtight container, put this meat in this box and seal it. Right, so he put it in airtight container. So again there were no flies. And even no decaying of meat. Why? Because we heat it. We also heat it, because when you will heat anything, the microbes will be killed, and when the microbes will be killed, there will be no putrefaction. What is putrefaction? Heat to kill any microbe. Why? To reduce or to prevent putrefaction. You must have not heard this word before, but let me explain you. Putrefaction is decaying of protein by microbes. Alright. So now comes the third one, Pasteur, Louis Pasteur. So Louis Pasteur was the one who did a wonderful experiment to explain that yes, only living organism can give birth to living organism, or he rejected the theory of abiogenesis, right? He was famous for pasteurization, the pasteurization that you do in the milk, so that the milk should not get stale, right? So he performed an experiment, and this experiment was swan neck experiment. So what he did, he took a flask and bent its neck. By heating it, he bent its neck. And the neck is just like a swan neck, so the experiment is swan neck experiment. Then he put a culture broth in this. Culture broth. What is a culture broth? This is a broth in which you culture things, right? You culture microbes. So this culture broth is basically a yeast solution. And how do you make a yeast solution? By adding water, yeast and sugar. So it is said that the yeast solution gave rise to microbes. It gave rise to bacteria. For example, if you'll make a yeast solution and you don't have this swan neck flask, just take a beaker, make a yeast solution and put it somewhere outside. After some day you will see there is a growth of microbes in that. Fine. Now the people used to think that yeast solution gave rise to the microbes, but he want to disapprove this, because how can yeast give rise to the bacteria? This is practically impossible. So what he did, he heated this solution and make it sterile. So this yeast solution was technically sterile solution. Sterile means it has been heated to a point that any microbe, if it is present, it is completely gone. It is completely dead. Okay, now what he did, he heated this portion, he heated this portion of the flask. Now whatsoever air will come due to the heat, this air will become sterile. That means this air which is coming from outside might be it contains a lot of microbes. Okay, so now if you'll heat it here, then the air will become sterile, and whatsoever air is entering into the yeast solution is a sterile air. So he find out that when he heated this portion of a flask, whatsoever was going, it does not lead to the formation of any microbe. So he find out that there was no microbial growth. No microbial growth. Okay, so this was the first step of the experiment. Done. Now what he did, he broke this flask and left this yeast solution like this outside. Now the air that will enter will be contaminated. That means this will have contaminated air, will have a lot of microbe. So here when he left this flask like this openly into the air, this caused microbial growth in the yeast solution. So from here he got to know that it was not the yeast solution that was leading to the formation of the microbes in the solution, or this was not yeast solution which was giving rise to the bacteria. Rather, this was the air that was contaminated. It was the air that was containing the microbes which gave rise to the microbial growth in the yeast. Okay, so that means if the bacteria was in the air, the bacteria found the yeast solution which was the best food for them. They ate it, grow and made colonies. So the bacteria gave rise to new bacteria. So this is how they disapprove the theory of spontaneous generation or abiogenesis and tells that life comes from pre-existing life. So this theory rejects theory of spontaneous generation. Theory of spontaneous generation. Okay, cool enough. Next is the theory of panspermia. This theory has also one another name, which is Cosmozoic Theory. So this theory was given by Richter, Helmholtz and Arrhenius. So what they think? They thought that the life may have came to the planet Earth initially, to the planet Earth when nothing was there, in the form of spores from the another parts of the universe, right? So some spores accidentally they hit on the Earth, because in the Earth the conditions were so viable that those spores gave rise to new life. Right, this is what they think, and actually right now even many scientists think the same way. That's why we are going to the other planets to find out the life, and or if the viable conditions are there, we can grow life there. Okay, so early Greek thinkers thought unit of life called spores were transferred to different planets including Earth. So might be if our planet is there, might be there is another planet as well. So these spores are also known as pansperms. They are also known as pansperms. Fine. So this was the theory of panspermia or the Cosmozoic theory. Now let's talk about a very well-known stated theory that a lot of scientists even have given evidence to prove this theory, that this theory is absolutely right, and might be this is right for somehow, and this has led to the origin of life on Earth. So that's the theory of chemical origin of life. Let's talk about it. So the theory of chemical origin of life was given by Oparin and Haldane, by two scientists, Oparin and Haldane. Haldane was from England and Oparin was Russian. Even Oparin wrote a book, Origin of Life by Chemical Evolution, to explain how did the evolution took place. So his theory was technically based on, he said a very simple thing. He said that all life, it originated from inorganic matter. Again, inorganic matter, inorganic and in fact organic molecules. They together form life on earth? How did he say this and how did he explain this? Let's see. First of all, let's read this one. The first form of life could have come from pre-existing non-living organic molecule. So these organic molecule, they obviously were made with the inorganic molecule, and that formation of life was preceded by chemical evolution, that is formation of diverse organic molecule from inorganic constituents. So inorganic molecule gave rise to the organic molecule and later the life. Fine, but how did he explain it? He said that the primitive earth was little different. The primitive atmosphere on the earth was different because the Big Bang has just taken place. The Big Bang has just taken place. So what happened? The temperature was very high. The temperature of earth was around 800 degrees Celsius. The atmosphere was reducing type atmosphere. The reason was because there was no molecular oxygen. You will not find O2, you will not find O3. The only thing you can find was gaseous clouds of these chemicals, and these chemicals or molecules, they were methane, ammonia and hydrogen. Even water was present in the form of water vapor because temperature was so high. Can you think of anything in a liquid state? No. So everything is in the gaseous state. Because there was no molecular oxygen, there was no ozone, O3. Because there was no ozone, so there was no protective covering on our atmosphere. So UV rays can easily enter. UV rays were there, infrared rays were there, right? There was lightning, and all these were the source of energy. So this was a source of energy available so that a lot of chemical reaction can take place. Now the question is, how did the life occur with all these molecules? This was the source of energy, these were the chemicals. So these chemicals, under the influence of these sources of energy, they reacted, and eventually, because water vapors were present, water vapor, they move up. When they move down, they pour in the form of rain. And you know, whenever there is a water cycle that goes on, you have learned water cycle. Whenever water cycle occur, whenever raining occur, there is a little temperature drop on the earth's surface. So that leads to the drop of the temperature on the earth's surface. Rather, due to that raining, the water accumulate on this earth. Nowadays, they are known as oceans. And that water act as a medium for all the chemical reactions. The chemical reaction that was occurring of these molecules, this chemical reaction was done in a medium, that is water. So there was so much rain, the temperature goes down, and that temperature, when it goes down, that also become one of a viable condition for formation of the life. Fine. So what happened, let me explain you. So water vapors, they evaporate and goes up. Imagine this was your earth, okay? This was your earth, and in earth there was water vapor. So water vapors, they're going up, and when they go up, they will form clouds, and once they form clouds, they will come down and pour in the form of rain. So there was rain for a long period of time. As a result, when it rains, because rainwater was also not like the rainwater nowadays, it was not that cold, it was hot. So that rainwater, it when pours on the mountains, they take the salts from the mountains, and this is how the salty water accumulates on earth, and nowadays they are known as oceans. Fine. So when the rain pour, it was very hot, it basically erodes the salts from the mountains, and the water becomes salty. That's why we have salty water in our oceans. So from where did that salt come? From the ocean, in high content, from these mountains only. Okay. Now this water, bodies, they become the medium of chemical reaction. So this water bodies that were formed, they were given different names. They were given different names like hot dilute soup and warm little ponds. They were known as warm little ponds. Haldane called it as hot dilute soup, and Darwin, yes, Darwin, how did Darwin came into frame? Because he also read his theory and accumulate a lot of data in his theory and call it warm little pond. Okay, so these water body becomes the medium of chemical reaction. Water becomes the medium of chemical reaction. So this is how we say our life originated in water. And then organism, later on, they left water and they move out and become terrestrial. So the primary organism that were formed on the planet Earth, they were aquatic. So what happened? When these chemical reaction, they reacted, what happened later on? Imagine there was methane, ammonia and hydrogen. Once they reacted, they form organic molecule. They were biomolecule, but these were very simple biomolecule. These were micromolecules. Micromolecules they form. They were organic. What were these? Like your glucose, like amino acid, lipids. All these molecules were formed. Okay, later on these molecules, they become complex and they become macromolecules. Now these macromolecules, they form aggregates, and these aggregates of these molecules later on they form cells. Later on they form cells. This was the sequence that he explained how the life was originated on Earth. So in short, if we say, he said that first of all the chemicals will be formed, which he called it as chemogeny, that there will be formation of chemicals, like these are chemicals. Okay, so chemicals will be formed. And after, he said, after the chemicals will be formed, that will lead to biological organisms formation, and that is biogeny. Then he said the organisms will be formed. And after the organisms are formed, they will undergo some sort of evolution and they will keep on changing and changing. And that's evolution. You call it as cognogeny. And then he said cognogeny will occur. That means evolution will occur. So in these three steps, he entirely explained his entire theory. Okay. So if we crux it up, it will be, first there were free atoms. From free atoms like carbon, nitrogen, hydrogen, oxygen, inorganic molecules were formed. From inorganic, organic molecules were formed. From organic, the complex organic compounds were formed, right? For example, here the simple sugars were formed and here complex sugar were formed. Then eobions are formed. Eobions are nothing but aggregates. These are not cell but the aggregates of the organic molecule, which can later on become cell. From eobions become the first cell, and the first organism to be formed were prokaryotes. Prokaryotes are the simplest form of organism, then which later on give rise to a little complex organism, which are eukaryotes. So this is the entire chart that how the life originated. Okay, now there were some scientists like Miller, S.L. Miller. S.L. Miller was a scientist. S.L. Miller was a scientist who explained, or you can say who did some experiment to explain this theory, to prove this theory. And these experiments are known as simulation experiment. What is a simulation experiment? He gave the experimental evidence by giving or by performing simulation experiment. Simulation experiment are experiment where you create the same conditions that are explained somewhere. For example, if I say there were dinosaurs at some time on this planet Earth. So I made a video, simulation video of it, just explaining how they were. Fine. So he did this setup. He took this electric spark chamber. In this chamber, in this one, this is an electric spark chamber basically. In this chamber, he put these gases which were methane, ammonia and hydrogen. This is what it has told. This was what the Oparin and Haldane has told, that there will be gaseous clouds present of these gases, methane, ammonia and hydrogen, and he kept the fixed ratios of 2:1:2, and also he kept the temperature of around 800 degrees Celsius. Now as it was said that water was not present, water vapor was present. So here he put some boiling water that will form water vapor, and water vapor will enter in this spark chamber. That's why it is written that water is also present. So in this chamber, along with the gaseous cloud, water vapors are also present, and there are certain electrodes to give the electric current or electric spark, and this will act as the source of energy. Just like lightning was the source of energy, this electric spark will be the source of energy. Okay. Now after that, what will happen? He did this experiment for longer time, and he saw that after 18 days of this experiment, he saw the formation of amino acid, glycine, alanine, and in fact aspartic acid. So if after 18 days, just after 18 days, these amino acids can be produced. Why not? The nature being so powerful, after a million years, why can't it produce the entire life? It's quite simple. It can, right? So what they did, how did they took the material out of it, because the temperature will be higher. So what they did, they put a condenser here. Condenser will convert these gases into liquid state here, and whatsoever is formed will come in the liquid state here, and it will be taken out from this tap, right? Everything is here in a gaseous form. After it has reacted, you have to take the material out. How will you take it out? You can't take the material out in a gaseous form. So they put a condenser here. The work of a condenser is to give the cold water and take the hot water out. For example, if this is a pipe, in this pipe there are gaseous element, and pipe is completely sealed. I put this pipe in a cold water. Whatsoever is present inside this pipe will also get cold, right? So just like that, they pass the water around this tube, and the contents inside the tube, they get condensed and they turn into liquid state and taken out from this tap. And they saw that after 18 days, these amino acids were formed. Fine. After this experiment, many other scientists, they performed their own kind of simulation experiment. Some added HCN, and they lead to the formation of some nucleic acids as well. They formed nitrogenous bases as well. So that explained somehow that this theory is somewhere right and correct. Fine. So this was experimental evidence. Let's talk about artificial aggregates. Now, if this theory is saying that, yes, these organic molecules will be formed, that we have already proven. Now, let's talk about the next step. This theory said that some aggregates of molecule will form, which will later become cell. So, it is said that some aggregates were also formed by certain scientists, and they were artificial aggregates. Some scientists also formed these artificial aggregates. They were quasarvates and microspheres. Microspheres were the aggregate of protein, carbohydrate and lipid, whereas the quasarvates, they were the aggregate of protein, carbohydrates only. So it was said that if we use microsphere have lipids, so they can easily form a cell membrane, right? Because they don't have a lipid, they cannot form cell membrane, because cell membrane is made up of lipid, and every cell should have a cell membrane, and that makes it a unique property, that give it a unique property of isolation. Okay. So yeah, microsphere can fulfill this property, that it can form a cell membrane. Alright, but what about the internal things? which is very important, the nucleus, the genetic material. So it was said that the genetic material, the first genetic material was RNA. The RNA later on gets incorporated inside these molecular aggregates, and then that leads to the formation of first cell. Now the question is, why RNA? Why not DNA? Why RNA was the first genetic material? Why not the DNA? Because DNA is a kind of material which is very much stable. RNA is highly unstable. If it is highly unstable, it is more prone to error. And more the error, more the change, and change is what? Evolution. So that's why it was said that the first genetic material that came into the cell was RNA, not DNA. Fine. So this was how the first cell was formed. Now the question is, who was the first organism? Were they heterotrophs or were they autotrophs? Okay, let's see. The first organism to be formed, they were heterotrophs, and they were chemoheterotrophs. What are heterotrophs? Heterotrophs are organisms that feed on the, they do not produce their own food, they feed on the outside food. Because water was a medium of chemical reaction, and in that water, there were a lot of amino acids, lot of proteins, lot of carbohydrate. So if you already have a lot of food available, why will you produce your food? So evolution will go in a way that you don't need to produce the food. So the first organism to be formed were chemoheterotrophs, and they consumed organic molecules. After the organic molecules, they were finished because they have eaten it all. That leads to the formation of chemoautotroph. So chemoautotrophs were formed that produce the food but not breaking the water because chlorophyll was not available. After chemoautotroph, the photoautotrophs, they came into picture. They had chlorophyll. And it is said that the first organism, the first photoautotroph was blue-green algae-like. It was cyanobacteria-like. So this is how this was a sequential event. And then plants were formed, and after plant, the animals, they move aside, and animals have their own evolution and plants have their own evolution. Okay, so this was about how the life originated. Let's solve this question. Following are the two statements regarding the origin of life. The earliest organisms that appeared on the earth were non-green and presumably anaerobes. The first autotrophic organisms were chemoautotrophic organisms that never release oxygen. So you have to tell which of the following is correct. The earliest organisms that appear were non-green, very good, they didn't have chlorophyll, and they were anaerobe because there was no organism that was autotroph. Then who will produce oxygen? No one. Oxygen came into picture when you had photoautotrophs who had chlorophyll, who used the water, they split up the water and then they form the oxygen. Here comes the oxygen into picture. Then the environment becomes oxidizing. Until then, the environment was reducing type. There was no molecular oxygen. So this is absolutely correct. The first autotroph organism were chemoautotrophic organism that never release oxygen. Chemoautotrophic organism, they don't release oxygen. Rather, they don't split water, they split H2S, just like sulfur bacteria, right? So they also don't release oxygen. So this statement is also right. So both statements are correct. Answer is 4. Okay. Next. Which of the following is the correct sequence of events in origin of life? Formation of protobiont, synthesis of organic monomer, synthesis of organic polymer, formation of DNA-based genetic system. So the first thing that happened was monomers were formed. Second, after monomers, polymers were formed, and then protobiont. Protobiont is the one that is formed before eobiont. That means proto and eobionts are nothing, they are cellular aggregates. Eobiont is little specialized like microsphere, protobiont is like coacervate, less specialized. Okay, and then genetic system was formed. 2, 3, 1, 4, answer is 3. You just have to put it into sequence. All right, next question. In 1953, S.L. Miller created electric discharge in a closed flask containing CH4, H2, NH3 and water vapor at 800 degrees Celsius. This is degree, okay? Degrees Celsius, and absorb the formation of. So what did S.L. Miller perform? Simulation experiment, and in the year 1953, he saw glycine, alanine and aspartic acid. All these are amino acid. Units of life called spores were transferred to different planets including Earth. Was explained in the theory of simple panspermia, also known as Cosmozoic Theory. Alright, so that's it about the origin of life, origin of universe, and this is how we have started the chapter evolution. So please read the NCERT one more time, study and revise this, and we'll meet in the next class. Till then, bye bye, take care, keep on revising, keep working hard.